everyone. Welcome back to the Priceless Backstories Podcast. I thought I would introduce you to a really cool gal who played softball at the University of Dayton. Lillie was one of our stellar leaders with Athletes in Action. Oh, does she have a story to tell? So tune in to the end and hear how the sport of softball gave Lillie more than she could imagine. From lifelong friends to finding a purpose to experiencing the power of prayer in incredible ways. One slide into third base dramatically changed her life. Another priceless story coming your way today, so come on in and join us.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Lillie. Lillie, where are you at? Tell us where you are currently located.
I am in my apartment in Chicago, Illinois, Little Italy, West Loop area, if you're familiar. And I'm in my bed because I don't have a desk, but that's okay.
So this is very authentic, right? You're bringing us into your space, right? Your apartment right there in Chi-Town in Chicago.
You are welcome to.
Yes. Well, Lillie, could you share this, even just a little update on what is your life like right now? Like, what did you graduate in? What was your major? And what are you doing in Chicago?
Yep. So I graduated from Dayton with my degree in civil engineering. And I took that and I had done an internship in construction engineering, construction project management before my senior year. And I really liked that. So that's what I sought after when I was applying for jobs after graduation. And so I landed a position in Chicago. I applied kind of all around, but this one worked out perfectly. And I really tossed up the job process to the Lord and said, take me where you want me. So that's how I ended up here. I've been working for a general contractor, doing construction engineering, managing a project. Very interesting first project to be on, but it's going well. It's gonna be a long one. So I've been on the same project since I started when I moved here in June. And so we're like 7 months into new city, new job, and it's been a lot, but it's been pretty cool.
So I had the opportunity to meet Lillie freshman year, and girlfriend, you are like, the Lord has done so much in your life, but it was super fun to get to know you for the first time. And I won't share a lot of that backstory because I would love for that to come from you. But what I do remember is at University of Dayton, just really praying that the Lord would begin to connect us with athletes who want to grow in their relationship with Christ and really want to see a movement on that campus. We had Athletes in Action on the campus in previous years, but we were kind of relaunching in some ways and with just transition of staff. And so had met Becca Potter, who was on the softball team, and she began to start some Athletes in Action movement there. And then Kelly Fitzgerald. It was like this movement on the softball team specifically. Now that I think about it, there were a lot of softball girls involved, but from Becca to Kelly. And then Kelly said, you've got to meet Liv. Liv is a pitcher on our team who just loves the Lord. She comes from St. Louis. And so I remember sitting down with Liv one day, getting to know her, and she's just awesome. But shout out to Liv. But I remember sitting with her one day and just saying, hey, what does it look like, not just for me to mentor or disciple you, but to really think about your team and who are girls on your team that you could see wanting to grow in their faith, that you have relationship with. And you were one of the first people that came to mind for Liv. And so that was the beginning of really, through Liv, really inviting you as well as Megan into this space, right? To do life and grow in your relationship with God. So that's kind of where we go back to, and really had the privilege of seeing you grow, from freshman year to senior year, and just a lot of just life that happened during your time at UD, which our listeners are going to get to really get some inside scoop on what that was like, that experience was like for you. So Lillie, what I would love to do is I would love to start with our first four. That's just a typical Priceless Backstories thing that to give listeners the opportunity just to get to know some fun things about you. So you ready for this? Can you handle that? All right, let's do it. So first question, how many siblings do you have?
I have 3 siblings. I'm the youngest of 4. So my oldest brother, Sam, is 28 years old, or just about. And my sister, Josie, is 26. She's married to my brother-in-law, Colton. And they have a beautiful, beautiful nephew of mine, which is Henry, first grandchild in our family. So he gets a lot of love and attention from everyone.
Yeah.
And then my other sister, Maggie, is 25. So we're all like 2 grade years apart, which is really fun. So my mom had 4 and 5 years, and it was incredible. She's a saint.
Wow. Yeah. She's a
And
boss woman.
yeah. And my sister Maggie also just got married this fall. So my brother-in-law Max as well. So adding some new brothers in.
Very cool. What is from what I remember, you're an aunt as well. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, what is your favorite thing about being an aunt? And what is is it a niece or nephew that you have?
My little nephew, Henry Thomas. I think my favorite part about being an aunt is that Henry's really the first like young, like a little baby that I've really gotten to interact with. And it's so cool to get to watch kids learn about their surroundings. Like, it's funny to think back. Like, I used to not know all the things that I know. And so when he just touches things and sees how things work, and, you know, flipping a switch back and forth, which is incredible because a light turns on when you flip this little switch. And it's so cool to see like how children are just so amazed by everything in the world. And as they learn these new things, and then it's really cool. Also just the joy that he radiates. I mean, he just makes everybody smile all the time. And it's like, wow. Yeah, children just radiate so much joy to everyone.
Yeah, that's so true. What, like, how old is Henry?
He is about 1.5 years old.
Okay. Yeah, my niece Tinley just turned a year on January 13th. So very recently. Yeah. So I completely hear what you're saying as a new auntie. Like, for me this past year, like, and just seeing the curiosity, you know, like, she's getting into things now that she's moving a little bit more and doing a lot of crawling, starting to learn how to walk. There's just this awness, you know, of her. And when you think about all the softball teams you played on, because I know you've had like travel ball teams, high school team, college team, like, give me some of your mascots. Who are the mascots of the teams that you played on?
The first team I ever played on, my mom coached, was the Cheetahs. So my mom was Rita.
The Cheetahs, is that like the animal, or is that like the okay?
Yeah, animal. So my mom's name was Rita, so it was not a formal name, but what everybody called it was Rita's Cheetahs, like all her little girls, all her little cheetahs running around. But yep, the Cheetahs.
That's cute.
Forever grateful for that team. I met my 4 best girlfriends in the world in kindergarten on that little softball team, and they are still my best friends today, like 17 years later. So that's pretty cool. And then I played for the St. Louis Chaos as my travel, like, competitive team. Actually, for most of my career there. I don't really know if there's necessarily a mascot with it, though. It's just like,
is it the Chaos?
I guess.
Yeah.
Then my high school team was the Marquette Mustangs.
Okay.
And then I was a Dayton Flyer.
Okay. All right. So, best food in Chicago.
Best food in Chicago.
It's like they have a lot of good food places.
Right. There are so many options. I haven't even probably scratched the surface with all the options that I can try. But I have been trying to find, like, found a really good Mediterranean spot. I found a really good Thai spot last week that I liked. That was called, like, Noble Thai. That was really good. There's also this little Italian place across the street from my apartment complex called Pompeii. And that is really good as well. That's actually the first place I went to with my mom and dad when they dropped me off. So that's
okay. Good. So are you a deep dish person or no? I know they're big on that.
I've gone to, like, the Illuminati's.
Okay.
That's pretty good, but it's just so much. So
it's a lot of food. Yeah, you're right.
Pizza.
It's a lot of cheese, like the deep dish.
So it's good, but I don't get it too often. Just usually when people are in town and want it.
Yeah, good deal. Okay, next question. So your UD walk-up song. Give us a walk-up song, or it could be all of your walk-up songs or your favorite walk-up song when you're at UD.
Well, let's see. As you know, and as people will find out, I only really had 2 seasons. I actually never got to hear either of them at Dayton Stadium because I never played a conference home game. But what they would have been, they're completely different. My freshman year was going to be a Hispanic song called Mi Gente. And then my sophomore year was going to be Every Time We Touch by Cascada. But both of them were just going to be like the rhythm, like beat part. There was no words to it. It was just like the fun beat was going to be. So I was going to, for all my 4 years, find just songs with like a fun beat. And that was all I would go.
Yeah. So what's you said Mahente is the name of the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See if you can find it. Maybe we could play a little something, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Try to pull it up. At least the, like you were saying, the beat version, the non-lyrical version.
Let's see. But yeah, and everybody.
This is our chance. Lillie, this is our chance. Yeah, pick one of the two. We're going to have a moment of your walk-up song right here.
I was going to say, I never really got to walk to an actual game.
Yo, my walk-up song was, which we didn't have walk-up songs till senior year, so I only had one. So you maxed me out on 2. But mine was Another One Bites the Dust. Nice. And it was like, it started like, are you ready? Are you ready for this? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Like, I like the first part of it. Yeah. And it'd be like, dun, 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 you know, like right when you walk up to the plate. So
that would be fun. I know. I love it. Girls had like older ones.
All right. Give us your teaser. Yeah. What do you got?
Just 1 second. It goes like un, dos, tres.
Oh, yeah. I know this. So if you're listening, feel free to jam with us for a minute. How would you do the walk? Is it like a strut?
I don't know. I'm just gonna dance.
Love it. What I would love to really have you share with us starting out is like, what was your experience as a college athlete at University of Dayton? And feel free to share like what drew you to UD, just some of the journey, right? As you're going from high school to college, but in the process also, like, what were some of the best things about playing softball at UD and being a student athlete there? What are some of the highs? What are some of the lows? So would you be willing just to kind of bring us in to your story?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you mentioned it also that some of my teammates, like growing up, my high school team, my competitive team, St. Louis Chaos, was all about anybody that was playing on that team and that organization had the goal to play in college. Okay. It was a very, very competitive team. And I had teammates, go to SLU, go to St. Louis University, as well as like Kentucky and Louisville and Utah and just all over the place. So played with a lot of talent. I always knew that I wanted to stay more in like the mid majors of like D1. I'm small. There was that, but then also just knowing that I would want to focus on my academics as well as playing the sport that I love. But so I always kind of knew that a mid major was going to be the best fit for me. So I looked to, and my sister Josie, who I mentioned earlier, is 4 years older than me. She played softball at St. Louis University. And so that's how I knew about the A10 conference. And my parents encouraged me to look into all those schools. We looked into Dayton, went to a couple of camps, loved it. Liv Lessman, obviously, who we mentioned earlier, brought me into AIA. She also was a big part of bringing me into really looking into Dayton as an option because she had committed there. And Liv Lessman and I had played together since we were 10 years old on the St. Louis.
Wow.
Yes. So again, shout out Olivia Lessman. Love you. And so anyway, yeah, I looked at Dayton, loved the campus, incredible feel. I loved that it was a faith-based university, that it felt like somewhere I was going to be able to do exactly what you mentioned, grow in my faith and like comfortably and surrounded by people who were likewise. So I loved my faith, and that was a huge part of that. So that's kind of what brought me over to UD, and then just actually doing the college athlete life is a lot, which I know you did it as well, Amy. So
yeah,
it's hard. I mean, it's incredibly time consuming. It's hard on your bodies. It's hard on your minds. The mental health, it's a lot of times something people struggle with. Just really big on time management. I mean, you can get stretched pretty thin if you don't like use your time incredibly responsibly. So it's, at least for me, and I studying engineering, so I came right into a pretty difficult major and spent most of my time, if not in class or at practice, was studying. And and knows in the book. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to time manage, but I think that's also one of the best things. I think a lot of times there's also some other statistic about college athletes having better grades, better GPAs and stuff, because you have to use all the time that you have available. There's not really much option to like procrastinate or not
True.
do well. And you have a lot of additional support staff, at least Dayton did, which was great, to help you succeed in all your classes. So that was definitely another cool part too. So I loved that Dayton was playing softball was also conducive to getting the education that I wanted to get, and that led me to where I am now. So
yeah. Well, Lillie, you did it well. So that's one thing I noticed about you was like you always seem to do it well and handle things well. And so I would love to lead in more to your spiritual story in terms of your college experience. And so a couple questions. One is, why did you say yes to Liv in terms of wanting to grow in your faith?
I mean, I think if she asked it like that, the answer would have been yes. I mean, like in terms of, do you want to look into this opportunity to have a faith-based community? I know coming into college, my relationship with my faith, it was like I was pretty, I like to use the word like content with it, is that like I knew and loved God and Jesus Christ as my savior, and I knew that I had that relationship and it was going well, but I don't think I had learned that much. I hadn't gotten into like the part of the faith that you can really learn and like study and understand better. So it was kind of a baseline, like good Christian faith. I love my Lord and know he saved me. And so when Liv asked me to come into something that was like getting to learn more about it, I think that drew me to it. And then as soon as I was there, as soon as I came to the big group and heard Kelly Fitzgerald, shout out, talking about the faith, I think that those times sitting around was really the first time I ever read a story from the Bible and then had someone actually explain it and like talk through it, and just had a group of people talking through it and like, how did you interpret that? What do you think? And I think that was like it's like, this is what this can be. It's like, this is what this faith life can be. It doesn't have to be just like a internal me and like I'm good. I know and love God. It was like it got to be something more. So I think I got that experience the first time I ever went to AIA, and I give a lot of praise to Kelly Fitzgerald for that. She had a really big impact on me as well, for just creating an environment that I wanted to come back to. So.
Yeah, I love that you say more. And so you had a foundation, right? Which is very common for college students coming into college. There's a foundation, and maybe their parents brought them to church or mass. And then but you said that like there was something more. Like how would you describe or define like what that more is that either you wanted more of or like the more that you experienced?
I think that more is like sharing your faith with other people. And I think saying it in that way is like, I feel like I find myself now, right? And we always talk about this prepping for my move of like, how am I going to ensure, I'm still trying to find a group to do this with now to still feel that kind of connection. So it's like, before when I came to college, I don't think I knew about that additional aspect of the faith that was even out there. And then I had it, then I got it in college. I got it that freshman year. And continued to grow that with just different groups of people, as you know, throughout the rest of my career. And now I'm like, I miss it so much. I miss having a group or 3 every single week, like my senior year, that I would get to share the faith in. Because I think that more part is sharing your faith with other people and like growing it with other people. And in like a group, in our one-on-ones at Tastefully Roasted, or our groups of 6 at Tastefully Roasted, like I think just getting to share your faith with other people, like that's the more that's the even more beautiful part of it, is that we're all the body of Christ. And so you have your individual relationship with God, absolutely, but then it's relationship with other people as well that just increases it even more. And it's, thank you for teaching me that.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. There's a verse that I was reading just today, Lillie, and I want to lead this in, share this verse to lead into the next part of your story. But this morning I was reading, it's 1 Peter 1, 6-8. And it says this, it says, "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold, that perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Though you have not seen him, you love him." And so hearing it's talking about trials and how when we have trials in our lives, there's a reality that we're refined in those trials, right? And it proves our faith to be genuine and really to be able for us to be able to see where we're at in our faith. And so I want to give you the space to share. I don't know if it's sophomore or junior year, but you began to experience some trials on the softball field, right?
Oh,
So could you just, share with our listeners, share with our friends and family what your sophomore, junior, senior year were like for you, and just kind of bring us into that journey?
Yeah. Well, that was a very awesome verse. I started to feel that as you were saying that. That's pretty cool. My freshman year even is when my challenges began. Got through my first semester, which was difficult, like academically, and making all those adjustments to the college athlete life. And then our first season beginning in the spring, the first time that I traveled with my team was to Colorado State to play. It's over spring break in March. This was 2019.
Fort Collins, right? Fort Collins, Colorado.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I finally got my first start. And it was actually, wow. I even remember before that, and this is just a cool moment with Kelly again, and it was Kelly, it was usually Kelly or I that would play left field. And coach told me that I was going to get the start. And I think I used to be anxious of how Kelly would feel. And she came immediately over to me and just talked me through how I felt about like getting the start, about, my game plan, like how I felt, or headspace, or whatever. And so just a super awesome, she's incredible, nurturing moment, selfless moment for her to extend that grace to me. So I just always think about that. So then I got my start, and I had a good first game. So I got to play the second game after. And I had dove a couple of times throughout the day on the base paths and the outfield. And at some point in the second game, one of the dives really hurt my stomach, and I started to get this stomach pain. And at first it was just like, ooh, ow, that's a little uncomfortable. So finish off the inning with whatever plays, kind of followed, and then went back in the dugout. Was like, man, it's kind of bothersome. Went back out in the field and continued on the game, finished up the game. And I remember then, of course, it was a not great game. So that led to a big team talk meeting after in the hotel with just the players. And through that, I remember I was sitting in the corner, and we're all still in our uniforms and everything. And I was like, man, I'm really hurting here. And I don't know why, but I'm sitting through this team meeting. I'm a freshman, and we just lost really bad. And so I'm keeping quiet in the corner. And then eventually we literally get cleared. And my two roommates, I remember, went to go shower in their parents' like hotel rooms that had come to travel. And my parents hadn't come to make the trip because it was going to be a 15-hour trip. And who knows if I'm going to play. So they didn't make it out for that one. So I was alone. And then I started feeling nauseous. And I remember going to the bathroom in the hotel room, and it was just me. And my stomach was distended. It looked like I was like a couple months pregnant. Still in my uniform and everything. And I remember trying to call my trainer, didn't get an answer. So I grabbed my car key and literally went down to her hotel room, knocked on her door, and she opened it. And I remember saying, "Help me."
Wow.
And then, and she could see my stomach because I unbuckled my pants. And I'm like, she's like, "Oh my gosh. Okay." And as I reflect on the story, I'm going to point out all the little times that I saw God's grace and guidance in all of it. So first one is that one of the team moms had scoped out the area generally for like the nearest urgent care or whatever it might be. And by the grace of God, we're in a hotel that's 5 minutes away from 5-minute easy drive from an urgent care, and then getting to the urgent care, not a person in the waiting room. Further than that, they have a CT machine, which I don't think that every single urgent care across the board is going to have a CT machine. So all those little things of this process, as I feel this pain and start to get scared and freaked out, and but just I think back at even those moments is God helping guide this process along. So I quickly get to an urgent care and I quickly get a CT scan. At that point, I remember I had threw up some blood. I think that was concerning for the doctors. My coach had been in contact with, or my trainer was in contact with my coach. People are starting to kind of figure out what's going on. And then I got an ambulance ride. I remember the paramedics coming into the urgent care room then and transferring me onto, a gurney, taking me off and then loading me up into an ambulance. And I remember even all those interactions of this young guy just being so kind and so comforting during this experience. And so I got sirens and all across to the medical district of the Rockies hospital. And that's where I remember getting pulled out of the ambulance, seeing my head coach, Kara LaPlaca, there. So now I've got my coach and my trainer, and go into a trauma room in the emergency room. And that's where trauma surgeon came and showed us my scans from the urgent care. And he showed us the scans and pointed out this mass it was the length of my pelvis. And he pointed to it and he's like, that's not supposed to be there. He's like, wow, what that is, but it looks like it's arriving from your left ovary. So we're going to take you up to the OBGYN floor and get you admitted. So I said, okay. And so then I moved upstairs. I had to wait a couple hours for an OB to come by or a GYN because she was like in a delivery or something. I think it's C-section. So then it was pretty late that night, I think. And the memory is pretty hazy for me now because then also I was kind of heavily drugged at this point for the pain too. But so at some point, the GYN comes down. It's just my coach with me. And she said, how about you guys get your parents on the phone? Because they were back in St. Louis. And she, over the phone to my mother, said that the mass that the trauma surgeon had pointed out looked like it was arriving from the left ovary. And I had ruptured it when I dove. And so all of the fluid and like blood from the tumor, it was what made my stomach distended. And my organs were pushed up into my chest. And
which is why it hurt so much. You were in pain, right?
I was essentially internally bleeding.
Wow.
From the dive all the way through the rest of the game. And then all the way through this meeting that I was sitting through with my team. And until I threw up in the urgent care and everything like that. So I was essentially internally bleeding, having ruptured this tumor. And then on the phone, the GYN told me that it was ovarian cancer due to the structure of the mass. It had invaded into the omentum, which is the tissue pad like in your belly that separates from your organs. And blood work came back, and the tumor markers that are supposed to be, a range of 50 to 100 was 100,000. So she was able to list off 5 reasons to me and my parents that it was ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
It was not it did not come off like a speculation or anything like that. And so with that, my mom got on a flight the next morning, and she and I flew back home the next day. So I was home the next day by like 1:00 in the afternoon or something. Do want to shout out for my coach, Kara LaPlaca. She was with me throughout that whole thing. I remember her grabbing my hand, crying with me. She stayed the night in the hotel or in the hospital room. So we think of that as our little sleepover, our bonding sleepover. So,
that is a good coach though. Like, just brief pause on that. Like, I know this is a completely different situation, but more recently with with DeMar from the Buffalo Bills. And I had heard a story that the Bengals coach had said when DeMar was on the field and made that tackle and instantly went into cardiac arrest, right? The ambulance came, and like say, these are two different situations, but the reality is he was a 24-year-old who had a cardiac arrest through his sport is how it came to be, right? And the Bengals coach had said that when he walked across the field to talk to the Buffalo Bills head coach, the first thing the head coach had said was, I'm not supposed to coach this game today. I need to be with my player. And that's what you're talking about with Coach Kara, right? That she wanted to be, she knew that was the place to be. Like, she's not just coaching softball here, right? But that you're a person and she wanted to be there with you. That's pretty cool. That is a sign of a good coach.
Yes. And our relationship since then, if you can only imagine, has only grown and bettered. I really value her friendship as well. I think similar to how I think that you have a great friendship. And she stuck with me. We had a sleepover. I woke up scared in the middle of the night, and she was there. She comforted me, held my hand, prayed with me. So yes, very, very grateful for her presence, her ability to give me a motherly or parent-like presence and comfort, because my parents weren't there.
Yeah. So Mama Rita shows up and brings you back to St. Louis, right?
Yep.
And you're with her. You're at a hospital.
So I got to go home. I went home. My brother happened to be in town. Usually he had lived in like North Dakota at this time. So he happened to be in town, which is awesome. Thank you, God. And my sister Josie as well. And so then it was from my diagnosis until my date of surgery to remove the tumor. I think it was 12 days in between. My mom remembers, she's like, it was 12 days. I remember every single one of them.
I bet.
And in between there was just a couple of follow-up appointments. We were referred to a gynecologic oncologist in St. Louis. And of course, the week that I was getting back, he was going to be going to a conference for like all of gynecologic oncologists were having a conference this week or something when I needed to get in to see one. So, I will add in another blessing of another just miraculous moment is that my mom's calling. She's trying to get me in. She gets a hold of his nurse, this really great surgeon's nurse, right? He's a busy man, Dr. Powell, and his nurse, Tracy. Here's the story. I mean, all of his patients are 60, 70, 80-year-old women. They're not really rare. They're not really 19-year-old girls needing to come in and have this kind of operation.
Yeah.
So this young mom of her own couple of daughters, Tracy, my nurse, she was like, you know what? He's going to be flying out, but he can see her at 2:00 on Tuesday before he heads out. And so just a super cool, awesome moment. They got me in, got to meet the doctor, got to feel some comfort from him. He explained to us all a little bit more what was going on, and he put us on a schedule for the next time that he was back after the conference. And so, that was a huge blessing as well.
Yeah. Where were you? How were you seeing God's hand in the midst of your teammates, right? In your relationship with them, as well as I know there were people praying for you. There was a specific group of people praying for you.
There's a very large group of people praying for. But anyway, my teammates, I mean, they were calling, checking up, sending love. When I got back to campus, just showering me in love, even though I couldn't play, couldn't be there, or whatever. But they just really brought me in. I know they were praying for me. I know that when the team had it broken to them, it was, I think, Briley's birthday. She always likes to tell me. There was this, they brought in like all the administrative people in the athletic department, along with my coach and trainer, and really like that, and brought them all in with my team when my coach told my team what was happening with me.
Wow.
Of it. And so this was the in-between time in that 12 days in between getting a diagnosis and having surgery, where all this information kind of kept piling up. I mean, again, within that kind of time, I got more blood draws that showed my numbers to be worse. Like then there was a fear of like the pancreatic tumor marker was high on one of my blood draws. So it's just a lot of more scary information happening in this time where I was home and just still physically in pain. But eventually came down to my surgery, and it's important that you mentioned all the people praying for me during this time, because I think it's nothing less than a miracle from God and the power of prayer, that the tumor, when he biopsied it and removed it, was precancerous cells. And so the reason that it's such a big deal is because, one, me rupturing it prevented the tumor from turning into cancerous cells. It prevented me actually having active stages of ovarian cancer at 19 years old, and having the problem could have possibly been even worse if I never knew I had the tumor. I could have lost both my ovaries. So my surgery removed the tumor, which had encased my left ovary and fallopian tube, and the omentum, which it had started. But super incredible. And this whole situation, honestly, even despite the pain, is just a blessing from God, because he was preventing further pain in the future, as he usually does. While stuff happens and you think that it's bad, you always have to remember that God has the best interest in all of our lives and all of our plans.
Yeah.
And also the fact that because I ruptured it, if it was cancerous cells, that could have led to all those cancer cells then being throughout the rest of my body. Like, right, I ruptured it and everything was jacked up, and it could have gone really bad from there too.
Just hearing your example and the reality of your story, like when we go through something painful, sometimes it's so easy to ask why. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking why. I mean, I ask why very often, you know that about me. But what I hear in your story is, if there wasn't pain, there would never been an awareness of the problem, and you would not have experienced healing. Like feeling the pain, right? The thing that happened on the softball diamond when you slid into third base, and the reality that like your body realized, wow, there's something wrong on the inside. Like something needs to be surgically removed, like for lack of better terms. And I just think about that in our own life. You're making me consider, like, what are the things that I'm going through that maybe someone listening is going through, and it doesn't alleviate the pain, and say it's not to invalidate, right, the reality of what that person's going through. But the reality too is, like, there is purpose in the pain, like it's not for nothing. And even thinking of our ultimate sacrifice, right? The ultimate example that Jesus, God himself watched his son on purpose, right? Jesus went to the cross to experience. He knew there would be pain in the crucifixion. Like he knew that, but he still chose to go through it. And like our pain doesn't lead to salvation, right? But Jesus's example, for him, he knew it was worthwhile. Like it's going to be worth it to experience this pain on the cross, because I know that's the thing I've got to do to allow my people that I created, right, that God created, to allow them to really have a genuine relationship with the Father. And so his pain was not in vain, right? It was like there was purpose in the pain, and the resurrection came, right? Yeah. And so just hearing your story causes me to lean in and think about when there is pain and hard things we're going through, how can we see the greater purpose while being authentically honest?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I wouldn't want to change anything about it, despite a great amount of physical pain in certain moments and a long period of time of fear and worry and anxiety. Because in that, I've become so much better in leaning into prayer and leaning into God's grace, because I was asking my mom before this, I was like, Mom, what do you take away? Because this was a really terrible time for her as well, right? She's just full of fear and sadness, and thinking that, her daughter is ill. And she says, science was telling us that I was going to have very advanced, very dangerous, very bad cancer. And a ovarian cancer at 19, which is even more bizarre and sad in different ways. And And she's like, science said cancer, and the power of prayer. She's like, I have no doubt that because everybody around the world, I mean, you had Casey's family in Michigan and Megan's family in California, all the way to Texas, my brother in North Dakota, Missouri, Ohio, like everybody everywhere who was lifting me up. No doubt that they contributed to whether or not it's the outcome or just my ability to persevere through the process.
Yes.
Saying if anything, if maybe we didn't change the outcome, maybe, maybe that's not it, but it changed us. The power of prayer from everybody else lifting us up changed my family. It changed our ability to like go through this whole experience. It's the only thing that was able to bring us peace, and the most beautiful thing about, at least for me, like when I think back on these things, my most beautiful thing about our faith and the reason I love it so much is because it's full of hope. And this is not in a bad way, but if the worst thing that's going to happen to me is that I'm going to have cancer and I'm going to maybe get to go to heaven sooner than maybe we expected, but I'm going to get to go be with Jesus and have the eternal life that he is offering me and the salvation that he's gifted me. Like if that's the worst case scenario, and not to sound weird at all, but my soul feels peace with that. I love the Lord, and I'm not like it's like I'm excited to get there, but I know that good things are coming. It doesn't scare me. So this situation that I was in, because of my faith and because of being lifted up in prayer, is the only reason that doesn't tear you down and completely overwhelm you and completely shut you down. It's the only reason I was still able to go through that time period and feel the love of others and give love back to others and still be there for my teammates. I remember they called me crying. I was like, what are you, they laugh about it now. I think Liv and Briley and Megan, they're like, they heard and they called me and FaceTime me and they're like crying and they're like, oh my gosh, are you gonna be okay? I'm like, what are you guys crying about? Fine. Cared about, like, so the power of prayer, whether or not it changes the situation, it can change you. And so even if your situation can't change, if it's completely out of your control, being in constant communication with God and like being able, that's how you're able to rest in his grace. He has all this abundant grace to offer us.
Yes.
If we tap into it.
That's the real deal right there, Lillie. And like genuinely what I've seen, thank you for sharing like the whole part of your story, right? Like not just this is where I am now, but to say this was the process. This is the backstory. This is where my mom came in. This is where my coach came in. This is where my teammates came in. This was me in a hospital room, like waiting to find out how the surgery went, or going through the surgery and just leaning on God and knowing that people were praying, and really trusting. And from my perspective, it was showing up to campus and hearing girls like Briley and Liv and Megan and some of these girls that were your teammates saying, there's an incredible girl on our team named Lillie, and not knowing you yet, like, this is someone you want to know. Like her story is incredible and crazy and like, wow. But like what we've seen is her faith is genuine. Though, like there were areas, right, that God wanted to grow you in through college. Like you grew a ton, but in that space, like God was preparing you for new things that weren't easy, and so what I saw was the following year and that next year, I mean, March is like your enemy in some ways, right? And that next year you step up to the plate and the pitch comes in, you're a left-handed batter. Where does the pitch land? Hits you right smack dab in the face, right? And it's the very next March, the very next year, and you find yourself again sidelined, dealing with pain and dealing with the reality of that. The following March, right? Not to bring all this back up, but this is the reality of your story. The following March, the whole world was impacted, by COVID. And so you're getting ready for another season. Typically, softball spring season starts end of February, beginning March. And the whole nation finds out that sports is canceled and the whole world is going through this thing called COVID. And once again, needing to sideline and be sidelined. And so I've just seen like the genuineness of your faith, Lillie, like in the midst of these moments. I remember us gathering for Athletes in Action for an event with Wright State, UD, Central State, some different schools here in Dayton, Ohio. And I thought, I feel like your story's got to be told. But it was still fresh and it was still raw and real. And reaching out to you and saying, hey, could you just like, I don't know, like, could we put you on the screen to share what you're going through? But we don't need to see your face. I know like it's probably pretty bruised and, you're hurting physically. But it radically impacted me when, because you were leaning into God during that time. I remember that. That's what I felt like needed to be shared with the college students that were your peers that day.
So that event, I remember when you told me the date, it was going to be the anniversary of my tumor rupturing. It was going to be the anniversary of that, right? It was going to be March 9th of 2020. And I was like, Amy, I remember last year someone gave like a testimony. I was like, that's got to be God leading that, right? Come on. I got to give my testimony at this thing because it's going to be a year after. And I was like, that's exciting. I want to do that. I want to share what God's already done. Silly me, thought that was it. So I tested that faith with another fire and see how strong it was. And it was 364 days or like that I was back in the ER and back in a terrifying moment. But this one was different because it was like, I know what's wrong. I just broke my face. I don't know what my nose was shifted falling off my face. I'm getting a head CT to make sure I don't have a brain bleed and getting stitches right in the middle of my face, which was really scary. And so this moment, and then I go home that day. And I remember you asking if I still wanted to speak at the thing, but I obviously couldn't be there because I was back in St. Louis. I was like, well, I still want to speak on it. So I was really grateful to share then too, but I'm pretty sure my message was like, and you mentioned it earlier, but we don't always get to know why things happen. And we don't always get to like, we will ask why, but that doesn't mean that God has to tell us because he knows. And that's what really matters. But I was definitely struggling, I think even in that moment of why I feel like I had been such a faithful servant and responded to this other difficulty that you gave me, this other trial. I thought I did pretty well with that. And I thought, why do I need another one? But I think it's like you just said, it's in that verse that you read at the beginning of testing faiths. How genuine is your faith? How much do you really trust God? And I'm glad that I stuck with that. And again, it's not like I was like, yes, I'm excited to share and get on the screen and everything like that. But I felt like God called me to this date and this opportunity to share, because I remembered the year prior that the girl who shared her testimony had an impact on me. I knew that God was wanting me to do it. So I was like, FaceTime in, I jotted down my notes and I said what I said. And I know I said it then, and I'll say now that I think one of the first times we met, you had told me that the only person who didn't deserve any suffering was Jesus Christ, and he got it pretty bad. So all of our suffering is, what I've come to learn, is an opportunity to know and love Christ better. That's the best way to describe suffering. That it's an invitation. It's honestly one of the best things I think that God can give each of us is an opportunity to suffer in a way that Christ did, because it makes us appreciate what he did, makes us love him, helps us to grow in that relationship. If you're forced to lean into it, like there's certain things in life that you can't really handle by yourself. You need God. And that's exactly what God wants us to know all the time, is that we need him. We like to pretend like we don't, but we do.
Right on. Seriously. Yeah, no, I love what you said. It's not easy, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. Just that reality that the suffering and pain we go through is an opportunity to lean into God and to really know him more deeply and in a more real way. And so, Lillie, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for joining the podcast today. Thank you for saying yes to live many years ago, and to saying yes to discipleship. I think I've seen how putting yourself in a space of discipleship has really impacted your journey. And from the first time that you, sitting in Liv's apartment with you, Meg and Liv, and for the first time when you said, wow, I just read the first chapter of John this week. And like, I'm getting it. Like there's aha moments. Like
Mhm.
I'm understanding God's word. That was 5 or 6 so years ago. But like from that point to the point of saying like, you know what, even in the midst of suffering and pain, like God is still here
Mhm.
and God is still good. To
Yeah,
now today for you to say, yeah, I want my story to really impact others. And so I appreciate you like taking the space and even to see, I would say your senior year when you let go of the sport of softball
Mhm.
due to the ripple effect of COVID, but to let go and say, but you know what, I still want to impact athletes for Christ. Like, could I invite volleyball players here at University of Dayton? Could I invite them to do what I've been able to do, really to grow in discipleship and just to see the fruitfulness of that and the girls that you're able to invest in that year and the relationships you had with the volleyball team. So all in all, I just want to say thank you. Like, I'm just so inspired,
Well, thank you.
honestly, by your journey. So
I was even thinking this morning, even one like last thing about
Sure.
even all the way to the volleyball team and that discipleship group, because it was incredible that whole year. But like of all these things that happened that led to my softball career being over. So the accidents my freshman and sophomore year, and then kind of trying to get back into it, COVID happening. Just
yeah,
I was like, I just don't think this is what God needs me to be doing anymore. But because I was involved in the softball team, because I got involved with AIA, because I knew Kelly and Liv, and you had brought me in and equipped me, and you had me lead the little misfit team of basketball and soccer, and it
That's
was
right.
Kyla and Hannah and all that, and that equipped me to be able to then the next year, when I was not involved with the softball group directly, that freed up, that gave me the ability to be able to lead that group. And so it's like, and I think about how it affected me all the way until literally today, that I live with one of my good friends, Allie, from the volleyball team at Dayton, from that discipleship group. And that discipleship group reconnected us in our senior year. We were friends earlier in college, but COVID separated us and all that good stuff. But that discipleship group reconnected us. And that's brought me exactly to where I am today. And I can chalk all of that back up to these moments of pain and suffering that led to my decision to be done with softball, that led to me to be able to have the time and the ability to continue to share my faith with more people. So it's like I took a step back from softball. I had already created those relationships. I knew those relationships weren't going away, but it gave me the opportunity to move forward and make more relationships and new ones, and to get to lead that other teams, this other sports discipleship group, and make an impact there. My senior year was, I think, just exactly what God had in store for me. And it was super cool. I'm glad that you were able to bring me into that, make it happen. And then the group was able to continue this year without me within the moment.
Yeah.
So,
hey, it brings me so much joy. Like seriously, like what a privilege, so girl, appreciate our friendship. Keep doing what you're doing. God is going to bring you girls, women in Chicago to have that community with as well. So I'm going to be praying for that. I know that matters to you, just keep growing in your faith and we'll stay connected. So
thanks for doing this, Amy. Thanks for
putting
yourself out here and listening to God's call for you and speaking to all these women and for women and encouraging in the faith. God's using you in so many amazing ways. He always has been, but I'm really proud of you. And it's really awesome that you took that calling and are doing this.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. It's fun. Yeah. So thanks for joining us today on Priceless Backstories. Stay priceless.
Bye, Amy.
Thank you for joining us with Priceless Backstories today. Isn't Lillie awesome? Her story never gets old, and I'd bet you could see glimpses of God moments through her story. It just makes me want to praise Him and to know her more. Coming up on the next episode of the podcast, we are bringing on the show the director of 3DM North America, Gina Mueller. Gina is a guru in all things discipleship and how to live missionally wherever you are, whether you're in a small town, a big city, a college campus, anywhere. I've been coached by Gina the last few years through AIA's learning community, and she's had a great impact on my life and ministry with AIA. If you want to hear about how to make a difference and live a Jesus-shaped life with those around you, you'll definitely want to join us and tune in.